Respect is how the young keep us at a distance, so we don't remind them of an unpleasant truth.
What is that?
Nothing lasts.
Would you mind introducing yourselves for the podcast?
I'm Sam Richards.
Casey Hansen.
Michael Mason.
And Anthony Lucero.
And the band that you guys play for is?
Cult Leader.
Okay. So right now we are in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in Rumah Api. And I usually do these interviews downstairs by the elevators, actually. But since the show is taking a little bit of time to get started, we can actually do it in Rumah Api itself. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but the space has a little bit of a history. It's kind of the heart of the DIY scene here in Malaysia. Let's start with how you guys ended up here. Why are you in Malaysia right now?
To play shows. We got contacted by, I think, Nick Wong. Is that his last name?
Yeah, Nick Wong.
From Singapore. He approached us after we announced our Australian tour to offer us the opportunity to do Southeast Asia, Manila, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Jakarta. Yeah, I mean that was pretty much it. Getting out here is obviously kind of pricey, so he just kind of wanted to swing off us being in Australia, so the flights were cheaper to get out here. And yeah, I've always wanted to play in this area of the world, but it never seemed like it would ever happen because it's wild.
Logistics.
Yeah.
Why this area?
I don't know, maybe just the sheer volume of, I don't want to say requests, but it just seemed like this was a really active part of the world for like grindcore and like really extreme music, like the enthusiasm and just, and that's probably the best answer, but also, you know, from my vantage point, this is quite a departure from where we are from, and I want to, I don't know, experience the world, and I want to be a part of the different DIY communities, as many as I can, because it's a special thing everywhere that it is.
Were there any bands in particular that you heard from coming from this region?
Warm Rock.
Yeah.
We got to play with them last night
Yeah.
in Singapore, and that was kind of surreal. Like, they're...
Yeah, I love that band. And so, but they're just the ones that are just, you know, the biggest band. They're on the radar worldwide. So we played with them, with their old band way back in like 2011. You know, so I've been listening to them since then. I think they're a fucking awesome band. But to see that they were on that show in Singapore, because we didn't know they were going to play. And then when the flyer got put out, they were on the flyer. So it was just like, oh, fuck, yes. And so it was cool. Yeah,
And
man.
it was a fuck yes.
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
were
they were
awesome. And we
not
got to hang out with them
disappointing
last night.
at all.
But yeah, I love the vibe of this whole area. Like, just it seems like heavy music has such a good foothold in this area. Like, and everyone is down as fuck, and it's cool.
Very enthusiastic crowd. You know, people in the States are so jaded because it's just oversaturated with music and touring. There's just shows all the time, and you can just tell playing like a show in like a basement in like Manila, like everybody's so excited. Everybody wants something signed. They want a picture. They're like up front. Like there's plenty of space in the room that they can just kind of hang out and have space that they want to pack in, and it's like you don't get that everywhere, and that's really special.
Were you tagged in like 500 Facebook posts?
Yeah, probably. We still have to
Facebook
catch up on
Instagram
the
is very
internet,
busy.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's been really cool to see like how excited everybody is. So.
Hopefully, Kale will live up to your previous two shows. You guys also played New Zealand.
Yeah.
You played Wellington.
Yeah.
I went there for the first time about 6 months ago, and man, that's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
They've got a great
Yeah.
music scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And both New Zealand shows were, I mean, way more than I expected they would be. Yeah. And who helped us out there, his name's Ben, and he, just treated us amazingly. And but yeah, those shows, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can name only a few bands that have ever played New Zealand, so to actually get to do it was crazy. I mean, this whole thing has been so.
Did you end up going to a show down there?
I did. They have a 3-day metal fest called Symbiotic. And so I saw a bunch of
Valhalla?
at Valhalla. Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
spot.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
and,
Ben on
and it's
Valhalla
this
and
Okay.
cool,
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
spot. But like even the big bands that would normally fill huge places, like
Yeah, like at the gate,
That's
it's going to be there like
yeah,
right after us. So it's just like, are you fucking kidding me?
yeah, like,
So that was cool as fuck.
Yeah.
it's awesome.
So let's talk about Cult Leader. How would you describe the music that you make?
Heavy. That's really it.
Yeah.
There's just so many different angles from where we're coming from that like to call it one thing sounds disingenuous to us. So it's difficult in that way. But to me, it's like I think whatever qualifies as heavy and it resonates with all of us is what goes into the band. And so like it could be hardcore elements, it could be like some spacey black metal element, it could be grind, it could be something from like like birthday party vibes or whatever. It doesn't matter as long as it feels like our band and we consider it heavy, it's gonna find its way in.
I would say emotion is a big like vibe to it. Like whether it's
Yeah,
the
it's
cleaner
just-
stuff or the heavier, louder stuff, it's all kind of that's what links it together. It's just like the mood and the emotion of everything.
Would you say you grew up or you came from one scene or another? Like, were you guys originally hardcore kids? Were you metal kids?
I mean, you kind of
I mean, it's not like so small.
tiptoe like from one to the other. There's kind of you get into punk because you got into like new metal, or you get into hardcore, and then that turns into like metalcore. And you kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Like I say I just straight up came out through the hardcore scene. It's
yeah,
all like,
same.
like that's where I went to every single show that could ever possibly happen. Didn't matter when or where or how. Just going like 3 shows a week sometimes when you're in
Big
high school.
DIY community in the hardcore scene in Salt Lake, so that's
I think I can speak for Mike as well as myself.
No
When-
scene.
When I say, well, I mean, like
No
by the time we started playing heavy music, I was very proud that I wasn't part of a heavy community, like heavy music community. Mike and I played in a band previous, like way too long ago, and it was just like weird indie rock stuff, like kind of like up-tempo, aggressive indie rock, like math rock stuff, and just kind of ended falling into like doing this surprise weird heavy music. I mean, it's just I'm more interested in like doing stuff that, at least for me, is something different, and I don't know, the approach and how we've always done things, whether it was Cult Leader or its predecessor, was just like challenging ourselves, if nothing else, to just push the boundaries on what really we can get away with. So yeah, no scene really. That's the short answer on that.
Have you ever written, or, because I don't know what your songwriting process is, maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, but have you ever come up with a part and said, no, this isn't Cult Leader, this doesn't work with what we're doing?
Yeah, all
like
the time.
all the time.
90% of the
Yeah,
time.
95%
So much stuff
of
just
riffs.
doesn't
Yeah.
make it.
We have a vault of riffs that are.
I've got like so much hard drive space of recorded practices where it's just
I don't know.
lost in there. And
I don't know that the issue is that it's not Cult Leader enough. I think the issue is just like, I think we're all kind of perfectionist in terms of like the material we choose that we want to develop. Because if it doesn't like elicit a tattoo on your brain of like, this is the thing I want to do, it just usually doesn't make the cut. And that's probably most of what's on that hard drive. Although that's not entirely true, and I would love to like dig through it.
yeah, part of it's just time and being able to like perfect every little thing. But, yeah.
On the songwriting front, we learned how to do something different for A Patient Man because our situation changed. Anthony moved to LA, so by necessity we had to start being more serious about recording ideas and whatever, so he would have something to work with. But also we practiced far more infrequently. We used to be like a 3 practice a week band, and the way we write isn't, it's not that Mike writes a song and we all go and learn it. It's we go into a dark basement and then we just throw a bunch of shit at each other, and then something might happen once every 6 practices.
Do you jam out songs, or do you come in with riffs?
You a mixture of both. Usually we'll bring in a riff, but the thing is,
More
like
of a thread to
all
pull
three of
kind of
us
thing.
will change each other's riffs until something special happens.
Okay.
So, yes, we come with riffs, and yes, we do a lot of shitty jamming. yeah, a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it's just because that's just what we start doing it. We waste a lot of time doing it, but I mean, half the record is a result of us doing that. So
Yeah, there's that magic that happens when jamming, though. Like, when you've got it, there's something, and you know there's something in there, but it's not there. So jamming it for hours and hours and hours usually ends up with, like, there's that one moment of, like, oh, what the fuck was that? And then that becomes, like, the seed that grows. And
Like it's not just like programmed into a computer. It's almost like a high school band figuring it out for the first time every time, and it's like really wears on you. But at the same time, it's kind of just how music like this would have to work because there's so many layers to it and the interplay of the instruments. And
I mean, and the song for us is never really done until it's finally recorded. Like we change things
That's the only way
constantly.
to
So
finish the song.
sometimes we'll have a song done in like 2 practices, and we're like, it's never going to change. And then, like sometimes we'll have a riff that we've been working on for 5 years, and finally, boom, it fits into something that we're doing. So it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
that sucks.
there are songs on that record that like there are 1 to 2 sections that were sitting around trying to be figured out for like almost 2 years, and then the skeleton of the song that those 2 parts were a part of, you get rid of one thing, and then in one practice there's this one part that's really cool, and you go, wait a second, what if we put that one part that just happened into this thing where there was that weird part that we got rid, and it's just this. Instead of having songs, it's like you have some skeletons and then you have 40 ideas on an imaginary board because you don't actually have any of the reference material. And so a lot of times I'll have to be like, hey Mike, remember that riff where, and then I have to try to explain it or whatever, and it's madness. But
You don't record your jams?
We do now.
That was part of the new.
But like
new
our first 2
process.
EPs and our first full length, it was like at most an iPhone recording in the practice space kind of thing for reference. But with Anthony being kind of separate from that process, we had to kind of write a lot of stuff instrumentally, send it to him as like a demo, and then that way he could write his stuff. But when we did A Patient Man, we didn't hear a single word of what he was doing until it was in the studio. So it's kind of cool how it all came together. It changed the writing process just enough to make it different, but kept it the same enough to still be the same band, I guess. But
Sure. So let's jump right into Patient Man. That came out November of last year, is that correct?
yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like this is the first time that you guys weren't writing as a 4-piece since you were in
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Yeah.
There
At
were-
least instrumentally, it was
Okay.
less.
It was less 100% cohesive. There were some times where, like, I could FaceTime in or whatever.
Yeah, we'd still get like notes from him on the material and feedback and everything.
Yeah, but that just, it slowed down our writing process exponentially just by,
Before he would be at practice and he could like have a guitar or like some way to be part of the writing process, like directly as it was happening. Whereas we had to kind of get, I guess, like just evolve that process or whatever. But we still like wrote it all together. But, yeah.
Would you say that changed the songs?
No, because every song has to pass all 4 of our yes button before it becomes a song. So I don't. The way we got to songs may have been a little different, but I think they ended in the same result. So
I mean, it's hard to say with any kind of confidence, like considering like the butterfly effect or whatever, that there wasn't any impact because we can't really see that alternate universe. And Anthony, for those that don't know, is actually a really great guitarist, and he has helped with the writing of everything except A Patient Man.
Right.
So that was an adjustment too, because we used to have Mike and Anthony set up with their respective rigs, and they could we'd have one more person to, bounce ideas and whatever. So learning how to do that was an adjustment unto itself as well.
Did you ever play on the records?
I
Yeah,
tried
a
to
few
do like
riffs.
one little part, at least have like I might touch in there somewhere. So there's a few riffs in there that are me playing, but it's it's his job. I like let him do it, but just every now and then I like to I want to do that part. So,
I'm curious, why just vocals? Why not vocals and guitar?
I mean, we talked about it when it was coming to this situation, but it was just I mean, he's a great guitarist, and we've already proven that we don't need two guitarists for the most part. And I could scratch that itch while we were writing, So being able to hold a guitar for the entirety of all of our practices and play and do all that stuff, that was satisfying. So it didn't need to happen, and I definitely don't want to perform playing guitar and singing. It's not something I want to do. It's way harder, and I just don't. It's not something I want to do. So just focusing on one or the other, and the guitar shit's covered, So, and doing vocals was a way to make myself step completely out of my comfort zone and just go for it. So it was a cool thing.
You'd never been just a vocalist before?
I mean, in the band, high school, it was.
Okay.
But ever since then, and nothing was serious when doing it in those days or whatever. So it was just a complete adjustment to do it to this, but it was something that I was looking for because I didn't want to play bass anymore. So it worked. It was cool.
Patient Man was produced by Kurt from Converge, who I'm assuming was a big influence on you guys. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
Yeah. What was it like working with him?
Well, this was round 2 for this band and round 3 for
Us.
some of the others. So I mean, at this point, it's honest. One of the positive factors of it is that we have a familiarity with him and his process. So I guess, how was it we've been with them a few times. We keep going back, and I hope that we continue to. But yeah, I just, it's great. I don't want to overstate.
Another thing, before we ever recorded them, we toured with them, became kind of friends. I think if you were to just go in not knowing it, that could be intimidating or whatever. It could be, but we had been on a 4-week U.S. tour and then like an almost 6-week European tour with them. And by that point, we were pretty good friends. So it was just kind of going in and, so that, I think that helped our situation.
This process was a little different than previous ones because, I mean, just kind of as an extension of how the writing process changed, because our lives changed, his life changed, and so we had some hours lost that we didn't know, and so we had to learn how to adapt. I wasn't as prepared as I usually am going in, so my takes took longer, and we had less studio time, so we had to get creative to get done in time. So we actually had all the instrument takes in the main room, but we had to, like, while they were doing guitar and bass stuff in the main room, Anthony was doing vocal tracking upstairs with Chris Johnson, who's he's another recording engineer in that area, but he also plays bass in Death Heaven and Doom Riders and some other things. But so we just kind of had to go for it and had to just trust it would all come together in the end. But if I remember correctly, Kurt didn't do any vocal.
I think I did maybe one song with Kurt. And then it was the end of the day. I did one song with Kurt, and then he had it set up for Chris, and then I because the way time was, but especially for doing the screamy stuff, I did almost all of the tracks in 2 nights. So it was just the way time was, and so we were up until 2 in the morning, just punishing Chris for the most part.
Yeah.
He just wanted to go home.
Hard. We were double working the whole time.
We overworked
because it was recorded and mixed in 10 days, but it was you're tracking something downstairs while you're tracking something upstairs with somebody else, or Kurt's gonna go home for the day and you're gonna keep working with a different engineer for the rest of the night, kind of thing, or even while we're tracking drums, it's we have a pre-production rig set up for Anthony to practice his vocal parts while we're recording drums. So it's we were on the clock the whole time we were there. Thankfully we were able to stay at the studio while we were doing it, but to do it in that scrunched of a period of time was a lot of work, and we had to kind of split up. We couldn't all just be in the room watching one person track. It had to be teams, me and Mike are over here and Casey and Anthony are over here, and producing each other, and it's really cool. I like to be in the room when somebody's recording. I love watching it all come together, so it's kind of hard to let go of that, but I think it was 100% necessary to pull it off in the time frame that we did it. So in that regard, it was a very challenging record to make, but Kurt's a genius, and he mixes so fast. He got it done in 2 days, and we were literally at the last second dropping in the last vocal lines for the last songs, kind of thing. He's got the whole record pretty much mixed, and we still got one song we're tracking upstairs while he's mixing that we got to kind of bring down. It was
intense.
It was really, really intense. But you get a lot of magic in the moment when you kind of push things to the last minute like that too. So hopefully it helped the record a little bit too, in making us decide and commit and not just take takes forever because you can. Yeah.
I mean, the record sounds great. It sounds fucking beastly. I wasn't that familiar with your music, and so when I first heard it, I was like, oh shit, these guys are a death metal band. And then throughout, just because it hits you so fast, and throughout the record, it just kind of mutates and mutates and mutates until you get to those last 2 songs, which are kind of this post-hardcore thing. I think it's been compared to Nick Cave and Swans and stuff like that. What is it about those different facets that you like?
I mean, it just goes into our first answer of just what is heavy to us,
the emotion
and what resonates, and what kind of music do we listen to. And I don't think we're trying to emulate that kind of music. I just think that just permeates what we are and how we write. And so, like, I love death metal just as much as I love Swans, you know. So, like, but I don't have a voice where I can sound like Robert Plant by any stretch of the imagination. How much I could ever want to, I can't. I don't have that. And so, just when it came to like us wanting to explore this stuff, that's just more, you know, I6. I'm probably the weakest singer in the band, but that's just where it all sits, you know. So it just, as we were exploring these things and these ideas and the things are coming together, that's just how they came together. Because I mean, again, like, they hadn't heard anything that I've been working on up until the recording process started. So once that happened, then it became like a totally like nailed down organic thing where Casey had melody ideas, I had my own melody ideas, and we basically sat in an isolation booth for 2 days with each other, literally face to face in an isolation booth.
A closet. A 2 square foot closet.
And just worked out those songs together. Like literally, like it's no joke. We were literally like nose to nose in an isolation booth because, like, you know, there's no windows, and so it cuts down on the communication process hugely. So the only way we could work together,
and you're recording loud guitars and bass downstairs, so you can't just not be.
Yeah, was to just do it in our underwear, face to face, in an isolation.
It's also really hot. You know that scene in Ace Ventura when nature calls and he's in the rhino?
Yeah.
And then he climbs out and he's just like at like 11:30 p.m. for like 3 days straight, just crawling out of it.
Yeah. And so yeah, but all in all, that should just happen.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, like, those songs sound very vulnerable.
They really, I mean, but for me personally, because, again, like, I'm not a, you know, I'm not a virtuoso singer. Like, the shit, like, it's almost like everything that gets recorded is the first time I'm doing that in front of people is when we're recording it, you know, so it's like, it is a very weird, very vulnerable space to be in. But the thing that you can count on, you know, it changes things when I can have someone that I depend on, and we can work it out together. Like, it's better, it would be fantastic if it was all 4 of us at the same time. Yeah. But just the way that it worked with me and him, like, you know, it was exactly what needed to happen to get those takes the way that everything happened, the way that it turned out. So.
And Chris too. Chris has a really good ear. Like, he just knows music. Like, he thinks like a producer. And so, like, for whatever we couldn't hear or figure out ourselves, you know, he was quick to, you know, offer his opinion in a very, like, tactful and, like, good way. So, like, yeah, I don't know. It came together how it came together because it had to. But sometimes even under that kind of, like, need, it doesn't. But it did. So it's great.
So we spoke about this a little bit off mic, but I'm a bit older than you guys. I was a metalhead who got into hardcore through, some of the more metal sounding bands like Earth Crisis, Strife, Refuse, stuff like that. And, as I was getting into hardcore, I was also getting into straight edge. And your town, Salt Lake City, had kind of a reputation around like when I started getting into this music, so like 97, 98. How would you describe the scene now? And how much of the reputation that SLC had back then do you think was deserved?
Well, how old are you?
I'm 40. I'm going to be 40 in 2 weeks.
I'm 38.
Okay.
So, when we were kids, the reputation, they earned it. It was an extremely violent, scary, but exhilarating situation to be in.
Okay.
Which I think is what, because I grew up like pretty sheltered, I guess, like in a religious situation that kind of kept me out of that kind of stuff. But my older sister introduced me to punk and to straight edge. And then halfway through high school, I got taken out of like this private Christian school situation and put into Kearns High, which was the hub of like the violent Salt Lake City hardcore straight edge scene. And it was just on and rolling from then. Like my life became nothing but going to shows and doing all that. But like the scene had just made itself like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the older kids were violent, and then the younger kids had something to prove, and then you'd go to a show or go anywhere, and it would like some beef from someone randomly would pop up, and then you would have to go on from there. So it just was just like this stupid vicious cycle that just kept going and going and going.
Sure.
And it ruined a lot of music. Been really cool. Like bands that could have done something that just didn't because they were more focused on, like what ripping the scene meant or whatever.
Yeah. Ruined a lot of venues.
Venues just destroyed venue after venue after venue. And it made playing music in Salt Lake really difficult for a long time. Like just because nowhere wanted anybody to play anything heavy. So it was just it was. In hindsight, much more hindering than helpful by far. But like, it was what it was, and that was like where, you learned how scary music is scary, and sometimes scary people play scary music, sometimes the most sweet, amazing people play scary music.
Yeah.
But it formed a lot of my ideas about heavy music and where I would want to point myself as a person, because I don't want to be like that. And I stayed out of most of the violence and all that kind of stuff when I was a kid, but like being completely surrounded by it and being in the middle of it, shit happens. But it was just like, I'm much more interested in like going to a show to see the band and pay attention to what they're doing, as opposed to like just the Mosh Olympics. Like, who gives a fuck, Like, the point is going to see people make art for me, And so like, that's what it's all become. I think that's what we're all focused on. And like, people seem to get upset if we play a show and people don't mosh. People always come up and like, sorry the crowd was so fucking lame.
People like
I'm
apologize.
sorry the crowd was so lame and nobody did anything. I'm like, yeah, but didn't you notice there was a room full of like 300 people paying strict attention to what we were doing and performing? Like, that to me is like, that's the point. Because like,
we're not background noise to your thing. Like,
like I'm not. I don't.
This isn't about you.
I don't mind if people dance or
the response is
whatever.
good.
That's fun. It's fun to do that. But the cool thing is like, people are there and you're putting stuff out there and they're taking it in. And it's this symbiotic thing. And I like it more to have a room full of dead silence and people paying attention than moshing.
We're getting old. I mean, I gotta say, like, going to shows for over 20 years, I'm very much over like having one eye on the pit while I'm trying to watch a band, and I'm really tired of like trying to catch kids as they're stage diving and picking them off the floor when they fall and all that shit. So yeah, I can understand that. In terms of the violence, what was the source of the beef? Because I heard it would be straight edge kids getting in the faces of people who weren't straight edge, but also animal rights guys going after people with like leather jackets and stuff like that, and sometimes just kids using hardcore as an excuse to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
That's 95%.
Definitely a chip on a lot of people's shoulder, and especially, you know, you get that reputation.
Okay.
And a lot of people think it's cool to be this, like, you know, toxic person, and you know,
Because it gives people power, and
Yeah.
you can dissect what it means for each individual person or each situation, but people get drunk on power and they love it the second they get a taste of it. And it was this, just like this snowball effect of so many things. Like, my experience with it was, you know, whatever, if a bunch of people that don't do drugs as their thing that's fun for them or whatever, if they want to, like, infight and create all this drama for themselves, I don't care. That's fine. That's not my problem. My problem is you're shutting down all of the venues, and I have nowhere to go see a heavy show. And we're not talking metal shows. We're talking Thursday. We're talking like anything resembling, like even counterculture. I remember going to an Further Seems Forever Elliot show, and during Elliot, which is like the most tender stuff, someone had to prove that they whatever, and they're swinging their arms and kicking people, and it's just like. And this was probably during the darkest period, because this was either right before or right after a particular Poison the Well show that basically shut down everything. Like in the span of 2 weeks, like everything got shut down. And so then, as someone that likes going to shows,
Right.
if you speak your mind on this new thing called the internet, now people have to defend their whatever, and now they're threatening everyone in the world
Right.
for saying, hey, I wish you wouldn't do that, it's not cool. Fuck you, dude! Like, no, it's just, I wish you wouldn't do that.
Put on your sweater, Grandpa.
Yeah,
I mean, you'd get a lot of people picking fights, and you'd also, back to like the Kearns thing and everything like that, it's like you'd have a lot of actual gang violence in these areas, and so a lot of it, I think you'd get a lot of young people banding together to kind of protect themselves
Yeah, I mean, that
from
was
like a
big
very
part.
violent era, like an area, like.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it. I mean, it wasn't just like that all these kids got together.
But it would start to turn into
But
cliques and factions.
it formed in that
music.
way, yes, because like where we grew up was a very violent place, just in general. I mean,
You,
it
like you
wasn't
could just be
straight
walking
edge,
down
it
the
was just
street
general.
in Kearns, and somebody would heckle you out of a car, and you could start a fight, and like
I mean, yeah,
you'd just be walking
so
home from school, and like.
that was a very real thing. I mean, like that's, you know, I guess the main reason that gangs really do start or exist, you know, is like
It's a big reason why
people
in
start
Salt Lake
banding
they
together,
put straight edge on a
and
gang
you need
list,
a
too.
group of people to protect you from another group of people, and you have to do these things. But then it's just, it does nothing but create a cycle of violence. It's just,
Yeah.
that's just the truth of it. You know, like you need people to help you defend yourself against other people, but then you get a taste of violence and fighting, and you start taking advantage of that power.
And now with the
and all
internet,
that
there's
shit.
a lot more accountability, and you know,
Yeah, the
so
scene
it's,
is very different now. I mean, I've, you know, like
it's
look,
not without
I-
violence, but it's definitely not even half of what it
Yeah,
was
like,
in terms of
I
extreme.
haven't been I mean, I don't even live in Salt Lake anymore now, but like you hit a certain age, but also like half of our life is touring, and so unless you're like something special or a band that I really want to see, I'm gonna stay home. You know, and so like, but at least as far as hearing about things or stuff, like it doesn't seem to be like it used to be in that way, but I'm sure the young kids still have something to prove and want
Yes.
to, you know, keep, like maintain some sort of idea of what Salt Lake was about back in the day. But I'm completely divorced of all that stuff now. I don't even know what's going on really.
I'm sure there are kids that like know about the history and like think of it in terms of like, oh, those are the glory days. Like I'm sure there are tons of Russians that think about the Soviet Union being this golden era or something. And
I mean, when I was getting to this kind of music, one of the things that I would hear was, oh, these bands were going to last 5 minutes at a Black Flag show. I was pretty young when, or at least still a teenager when Henry Rollins put out that book of his diary, his Black Flag diaries, and I was like, fuck, like, I wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes at a Black Flag show, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because that shit was crazy.
Yeah.
Just like skinheads showing up and punching you just because they don't like the way you look.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's not something to grow a music scene out of.
Yeah.
Or people punching other people because it's the thing you
Yeah.
just do.
It's just
like not like
what's expected at a show.
yeah, not it's like done out of the purpose of chaos.
Yeah.
Instead, like we're not even talking about like this.
Yeah.
So like hardcore. Like from what I understand, I wasn't alive in the '80s. There's plenty of violence just for the sake of like.
You were alive in the 80s.
Well, I wasn't going to shows at 3 years old. But yeah, I wouldn't either. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, my feeling about it is like a lot of these mosh pit warriors, they're not there for the music. They're there for everything but the music.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's unfortunate that, and it's always like a really small group of people, a percentage of people, who can, you know, completely shut down and ruin the reputation of the scene.
It just takes 1%.
Yeah, and they're gone within like 18 months or 2 years. You know what I mean? Like they were never there for the music. They were never interested in the music. Yeah. I don't know.
And if they do stay into that kind of shit for longer than that, there's nothing more sad than somebody who gets old and that's still their thing. You know, like
Yeah, it's like the guy
being the 40-year-old at the show and you
Al
just
Bundy.
punch some 15-year-old kid because they mosh next to you or something. Like, there's nothing cool about that.
Crowd kills a 17-year-old girl, like
Yeah, like
because they know they can.
It's dumb. But yeah, well, I mean, out of all of that, I would much rather play to a crowd who is just there and paying attention and giving us back what we're putting out, as opposed to being interested in how sick the pit is.
All right. So finishing up, you are near the end of your Southeast Asia tour. I believe you're playing Jakarta tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you guys have a whole bunch of tours and tour dates coming up after that, right?
yeah, we have.
Yeah, yeah. We got in the States. We have a Northwest tour with Call of the Void that goes to the Modified Ghost Festival, which is going to be looking forward to that. The lineup's really cool. And then we're doing a month in Europe with like different legs, different bands. Like Coil Guns are a lot of it, and then Birds in Row, and then we're doing a few shows with our good friends Godmother, who are based in Sweden, at the end of it. And I think Hellfest is in that run, and Roskilde Festival. So yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and then after that,
School.
Try to be grown-ups for a little while.
yep.
And since you're finishing up the Southeast Asia tour, was it what you expected? Was it better than you expected?
So
Better.
much better than
Better,
what
yeah.
we were. I mean, because you just try to temper expectations for everything that you do, you know. But this whole entire tour has been just so much better, and everyone fucking rules. And yeah, like all of these shows have been. So
We're willing to
good.
do this for just the experience,
Yeah.
but for it actually to turn out like all the shows being like 5 stars and like the crowds just being amazing to us, like means so much because we've never been here, and who knows, you know, when the next time we can and where the scene will be, and you know, it's it like means a lot.
And is there anything you want to say to the kids who came out for these shows?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And
Keep it up.
we know it's kind of pricey and whatever, so it means all the more that people would be willing to chip that in.
Excellent. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
Party on, Wayne.
Party on, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Man.